Jennifer, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Forbes. I am running for Kitsap County Superior Court. And this is probably the second time, or third time, or 10th time I've spoken to many of you. As time permits, I'm going to get a little bit into my background and experience. I think as this morning progresses, I'm going to have a lot of opportunities to do that. What I want to start with is by thanking those of you who are in the room and on the video who supported me in the primary. As many of you may know, we won the primary with nearly 50% of the vote in a four-way race. And looking at the precinct information, we actually won 98% of the precincts countywide. We're very humbled and thrilled to have this result, but we're not taking any of this for granted. You may also recall from previous discussions or from my website or from other information that I was rated exceptionally well qualified by 4 different bar associations in Washington State. I'm proud to announce that I was recently rated as the preferred candidate by the local Kitsap County Bar Association that rated 64 to 1. This was an extremely humbling experience to have my peers rate me as the candidate that they think is the best suited for this position. I also am really proud to announce some of my more recent endorsements, which include Sheriff Steve Boyer, who's joined my campaign. I've also been endorsed by a total of 35 judges. 21 of those are local judges. I'm the only candidate endorsed by any of the local judges. I've also added the endorsements of the Kitsap Sun, the Herald, as well as the Deputy Prosecutors Guild and a number of other organizations. Getting a little bit into why I've chosen to run for this particular office. I've told many people the story about how I used to work in the juvenile department of the prosecutor's office, and I had the opportunity to be mentored by one of the most impressive judges that have ever served in Kitsap County, and that's Judge Karen Conley. She was the first female judge to actually serve on the Kitsap County Superior Court bench, and she pulled me aside and told me that this is the direction I needed to take my career. I've gone into private practice after being a prosecutor for 10 years, and in that time working in private practice, I've understood how significant these cases that come before judges really are. As a pro tem judge, I've worked as a pro tem judge for the last 7 years. I have nearly 1,200 hours actually on the bench as of today's date. And during both my time as a pro tem judge as well as an attorney representing individuals, it's very clear to me that judges need to understand the significance of how those court cases affect those individual people who stand before them. I've chosen to run because I believe it's very important that we have the best people in our Superior Court who understand that that is the most important case to the person who's standing before them, and in some cases it's the worst day of that person's life. A judge that understands that and respects that, that's the kind of judge I choose to be, and thank you. I'm out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you all for coming this morning. And now that everyone's on their second cup of coffee, hopefully we're all alert enough so that, including myself, that we can make some sense. I'm Klein, and I'm running for Superior Court Judge, position 7. And I'm running because I have a passion for the law and for justice and for our community, where I have lived with my family for over 28 years. I've been a lawyer for 30 years and have a diversity of experience. That experience includes over 20 plus years as a civil and criminal trial attorney. I've tried over 75 felony cases myself. In addition to civil and criminal law, as a trial lawyer, I've practiced employment law. I've been a general counsel for a software publishing company where I was responsible for developing and running the human resources department, document retention policies, all licensing, contract, employment law, intellectual property, real estate. In short, as the general counsel for a company, whatever came up was my job to face, similar to a Superior Court judge, and handle and advise the company on those matters. In addition to being general counsel for a publishing company, I've taught at the University of Washington Law School. I, in addition, have pro-temmed, and I'm the only candidate who has pro-temmed in both Superior and District Courts. I have done that throughout my career for over 12 years. And I currently conduct the business law and the business for a company in Puget Sound, helping seniors manage their health care. So I understand the needs of our community and the needs of a small business, which is to do more with less, as we must do in these times. In addition to my diversity of legal experience, I am committed to our community. I've been involved in many organizations over the course of my 28 years here, including serving on the YWCA Board of Kitsap for over 5 years. I currently sit on the Kitsap County Health Priorities, which is an association with the Health District, United Way, and Harrison to provide, in our case, charity medical care for those who are under and uninsured in our community. I also volunteer at Squamish Elementary, teaching kindergartners and third graders how to read, which is a joy. And I serve on the Washington Women Lawyers State Board. My diversity of experience in law, in life, in running a business will serve you well as your next Superior Court judge. Thank you.
So this first question from our audience is maybe a little bit to address in the initial introductory remarks, but they would like for you to ask this more specifically, answer specifically, which the question is, what motivated you to run for this position? So since we just finished up for Karen, let's go to Jennifer. Jennifer?
I did start my discussion a little bit about what motivated me to run for Superior Court Judge. I've been a litigator for 16 years. I've handled more than 100 jury trials. I've been in federal court, I've been in state court, I've been in Pierce County, I've been in King County, I've been in Thurston County. I've been throughout the state of Washington as a litigator. And that experience has taught me how important it is that we have judges who truly understand the importance of the cases. I don't want to repeat everything I said before, but truthfully, a judge is dealing with a person who's standing in front of them who's having absolutely the worst day of their life. A lot of them are facing criminal offenses, disillusions, they're potentially losing their custody of their children, and we need to have a judge who has that experience, who actually practices in Superior Court. I'm the only candidate who stands here who regularly and consistently, at this point in time, practices both criminal and civil law in Superior Court. I think it's important that we have judges who understand the significance of these cases in that amount of time.
The question was, again?
The question is, what motivated you to run for this position?
What motivates me to run for Superior Court is my passion, and I want to take the skills I have as a lawyer working in the private, the public, the corporate, and the educational sector. I also taught at the University of Washington Law School, and combining all of those skills and passion for justice and the law into one forum where I can administer justice and make sure that everyone is heard. Having tried many, many cases, I'm very familiar with the courtroom process myself. Having pro tem, I understand how to preside over cases. Having taught students, I understand the importance of education. And having worked, having raised a son, and I've learned a little bit of common sense. And I want to take all those skills, and that's what motivates me, because what motivates me is to make a difference and to make sure that people are heard and are treated fairly and with respect. Thank you.
And staying with you, Karen, so we'll move on to the next question, which is, again, another bit of a warm-up question. The question is, please explain what integrity means to each of you. Well, what it means to you.
Integrity means being honest, means having the courage to do what's right, means having a strong moral compass to me, and always acting in the best interest of, in this case, the public, because as a judge, you are there to serve the public. Following the law as a judge based on the facts in front of you, setting aside biases. We all have biases. We must set them aside when we're serving in the public capacity as a judge, because people's lives are at stake and you are there to resolve and decide conflict and decide facts. This is the only court where factual issues are decided. Once above this court, in the Court of Appeals, you cannot bring in new facts. So integrity means being honest and acting with principle at all times, and being true to yourself, and being independent. Thank you.
Integrity is a subject that's imperative for a judge, and Karen really touched on the main factors. This is one of those questions that answering second isn't always the best. But truly, integrity is the ability to set aside your personal beliefs, no matter what you personally feel about a subject matter. It doesn't matter if the person standing in front of you is the worst person on the planet, they do terrible things. If the law is on their side, you as a judge have to have the courage and the integrity to follow the law. I've had a situation with a client where my client was not the nicest person. The next door neighbor, the plaintiff, was a person who was a nice lady who lived on her property for 80 years and was a good person. The judge who we faced had to put aside the fact that my client was not the nice person, but had to apply the law to the benefit of my client. Judges who have the ability to do that have true integrity. They're not there to establish laws. They're there to follow laws regardless of their personal views. Thank you.
And now that we're warmed up, we can jump into some good questions, a little more in depth, and starting with you, Jennifer. The question is, as a judicial candidate, you are running for a position that is supposed to be independent. What is your criteria for deciding what type of events and venues that you campaign at? And I'll be happy to repeat the questions as needed.
As a judicial candidate, we're constrained by ethical rules, which restrain our ability to go to every event we want to go to. We have more freedom than a person who's a judicial officer who's not running for office. A judicial officer who's not running for office cannot go to partisan-oriented events, such as Democratic events or Republican events. As a candidate, we can go to those events. One of the issues that's come up in my particular race is whether or not it's appropriate to go to candidate-specific events where it's a fundraiser for a particular candidate in a political office that's a partisan office. Because I had concerns about whether or not that was appropriate, the first thing I did was I called the Judicial Ethics Board and I asked them the question whether or not that was appropriate. They advised that it was not appropriate to go to those types of events, and so I've chosen to not go to fundraising events for partisan officers. I have gone to partisan events because I think it's important that we reach out to voters on both sides. I go to both Republican events and Democratic events, and I'm out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have followed the rules, and I go to events to seek support of all people because it are the people who elect you. I have talked specifically not only to the Public Disclosure Commission, but also to the Judicial Conduct Board, and have spoken with members of the board to get specific opinions. And under the canons of judicial ethics, candidates for judicial office are permitted to attend any and all events, whether it's a Democratic, Republican, or nonpartisan event, whether it's for a particular individual or just simply for the party. And in fact, I enjoy support from both Republicans, Democrats, independents, far left, far right, and in between. And when I campaign, I want to meet as many people as possible, so I go to every event, and that has been with the sanctions and approval of the Judicial Conduct Commission. So I will seek out as many voters as I can. Thank you.
All right, and staying with you, Karen, the question from our audience is, how will you make a personal difference to the person in front of you in your court?
I hope to make a personal difference to every individual who stands in front of me in court. Excuse me. And I will do that by bringing my experience as a lawyer, as a business person who's worked with seniors and understands the sensitivities of aging issues such as guardianships, elder abuse, and probate, as a person who understands what it means to be a parent, as a person who has wide, vast experience in all types of law. I've represented thousands of individuals throughout my career, from the wealthy to the poor, from the homeless to the very rich. And I will make a difference by listening, by making sure that people are treated fairly, and that they are heard. Because this is a place of conflict, and not everyone wins. In fact, in court, many people feel like they lose. So what you can bring is to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. This is really the main reason that I've chosen to run for judge, is because I want to make a difference in the lives of people who come to the court and who present themselves to court. Access to justice isn't simply filing your filing fee. Access to justice is having a judge who's going to not only just listen to what you have to say, but take the time, not put their golf game as the priority, not put their lunch appointments as the priority, but take the time to understand their role as a public servant is to take the time to read the cases, to understand the law, and to try to render a just decision. Again, even if it's negative to the person, you have to give them the feeling that they were heard, and to do that, you have to fulfill your role to provide access to justice. I also bring a lot of experience to the table. I have been working as a municipal lawyer for several years here, which gives me a broad base of experience. I'm also a business owner and a parent as well. And those experiences do assist you, but the prime focus is doing your job and giving it the dedication it deserves.
Thank you. And Jennifer, staying with you, the question is, when judges are deciding cases, do they have an obligation to look at all evidence submitted, or should they be able to use their discretion?
I'm not sure I completely understand this question. I think it's both. A judge, first and foremost, as I just stated, needs to take the time to read whatever's presented to them. I've certainly had judges where I've come to court and I've submitted briefs that my clients have paid me for and spent hours of my time and thousands of dollars of their money, who never read the briefs that we submitted because the judges were lazy, didn't give them the attention it deserved. So you read everything, you look at everything that's presented, because if you choose to just not look at a piece of evidence, you're not giving that person their fair due time in court. And discretion is part of it, but they're two different things and they come in at different times in the process. Looking at the evidence and reviewing the case as it's presented is not a discretionary act, it's a mandatory duty of a judge if you're going to take on this obligation and this role to hear cases. Discretion comes into play in terms of certain types of legal issues that you might decide. Certainly evidentiary decisions are oftentimes discretionary decisions. Out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. With regard to the question of whether you should look at all the evidence or not, as a judge, when you're hearing a trial, you must decide what's admissible and what's not under the rules of evidence. And what's interesting is that once you decide something is not admissible, from a lay point, I think it's interesting because what you have to do then is set aside those things and not consider them. So you want a judge who is able to do that. Because if there's a jury trial, they won't hear the evidence. If it's a court trial, however, in fact, you've read this, you've heard it and considered it and ruled that it's not admissible, so then it can't be considered in your decision. And so you must be able to set aside that evidence. You do use your discretion in running a courtroom. You want it to be efficient, but you want it to be fair. And you use your discretion frequently in sentencing. We have guidelines in our state, but in criminal matters, which is court here, it's felonies up to the death penalty, you must look at all circumstances. Thank you.
All right, and staying with you, Karen, the question is, what plans do you have to expedite court cases so there is less of a backlog of the cases?
Expediting of cases is something is on the foremost of everyone's mind. There is no magic wand. There are some things which we can do and which I hope to do once elected to the bench. Those would include keeping people in court to a strict timeline to avoid excusable delays. often parties bring motions and continue and continue. And if the court and the parties know that you're holding people to a timeline for avoidable delays, you can make the process more efficient, which saves time for witnesses such as officers and civilians who are coming into court, so they're not sitting in the hallway. Secondly, I would like to encourage settlement conferences where if we have judges who can sit with settlements, then we are going to make the court more efficient because we're saving time on trials. And if you can settle a case, both parties are more likely to obtain the results they want.
Thank you. Thank you. As a pro tem judge, I work in several different courts, and one of the courts I work in is the Kitsap County District Court, where I hear civil cases as well as small claims cases. And that court is a model of efficiency. Our Superior Court can learn a lot about how to expedite cases by how our district court operates, because it has to handle a larger volume of cases. One of the things the district court does, which I think Superior Court can learn from, is to provide mediation services at the courthouse. We do have settlement conferences already, but that takes the time of a judge to take out of the courtroom where they can be handling other cases, which reduces in some ways the efficiency of the courtroom. What we need are these third-party mediators to be available. The cost of mediation is what's the problem. And when we bring mediators in as volunteers on our family law calendar, we have seen how effective that is in reducing the cases and allowing them to settle. I also agree with Karen actually that we need to start imposing a case schedule. Pierce County has done that for years, and I think that would be very effective for our system as well. Thank you.
So this question from the audience is, staying with you, Jennifer. Do you think the voting public should pay attention to the most recent Kitsap County Bar Association poll as a thermometer of the candidates' qualifications and competencies?
I think our bar poll has certainly pluses and minuses. I'm the Kitsap County Bar President. I've been dealing with the bar poll for years as a member of the board, and the value of our bar poll is, it is what it is. What it does tell you, and what our particular poll tells you, is that the attorneys who are familiar with the candidates believe that there is one candidate who is better for the position than the other. How valuable that is, it has proven over the years to be valuable to some and not to others. But what I think is important is what it implies, which is, again, that the people who know who are participating in as candidates, they know their experience, they know their qualifications. I'm very proud of the bar poll results because I have been pro-temping in this county for 7 years. Most of these attorneys have appeared in front of me on a regular basis, and because they have given me their trust, it means a lot to me, and I think that and it's very informative. Thank you.
I think the bar poll is what it's worth. It's an opinion which is sent out by email to all the attorneys. Less than 25% of the attorneys who are members of our bar, which don't include many lawyers who are members of our county, voted. So my opponent is president of the Kitsap County Bar, and she did secure most of the votes in the limited results we saw. Like, as I said, less than 25%. I have pro-temmed in Kitsap County courts. My practice has been primarily federal in the recent past, and as general counsel, working for companies who are not in court as frequently. So many of the attorneys who are members of the Kitsap Bar are not as familiar with me as with my opponent. So I think it's worth what it is. It's 65 people who have voted. That's not nearly the number of attorneys in Kitsap County. Thank you.
All right, and staying with you, Karen, this gets a little bit more personal, I guess you might say. Audience member wants to know, would you impose capital punishment on a convict? Karen.
Sentencing is based on the facts. To say generally what you would do and would not do, in theory, is really irrelevant. I have decided when I decided to run, I looked at all of the factors, and one of them is, would I impose the death penalty if a jury ruled for the death penalty in a case, or if the jury trial was waived and it was up to the judge. And I thought long and hard about that. I have represented individuals accused of capital crimes and facing the death penalty. I decided that I could do that. It would be the hardest thing I did. I think sitting in judgment on someone's life there's nothing more serious and more important. However, if I am elected, I have taken an oath to uphold the law. That is the law. So if there was a sentence of death, I would impose it.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I agree with Karen on her answers. The reality is that the judge doesn't decide what the law is. The law is decided by the legislators and legislators, excuse me. And the reality is that as a judge, if I'm going to start imposing my will over the will of the legislator, the will of a jury, then I'm undermining the system that I'm supposed to be cherishing as a judge. So my job isn't to decide right now as I sit here whether or not I'd impose the death penalty on any particular given defendant who stands in front of me. Because as Karen noted, you have to take each case on the facts as they are presented in front of you. But ultimately, a jury decides whether or not the death penalty is appropriate in a particular case. It starts with the prosecutor who elects to seek the death penalty. As a judge, I have no control over that. It then goes to the jury to decide ultimately whether or not that's the appropriate sentence. If it's the verdict of the jury and the verdict of the jury is sustained under the law, my job as a judge is to impose the law. Thank you.
And now, moving from the micro to the macro level, same with you, Jennifer. The question is, how would you judge if a question arose regarding the incorporation of Silverdale?
Well, as I'm sure the reason this question has been asked is because I have worked with the Silverdale Incorporators as a volunteer a ton of my time to provide them legal guidance. I'm a municipal lawyer. There's not a lot of municipal lawyers in the community, and I was asked by Hank Van Sykes to participate in the incorporation effort and to help guide the citizens through the legal process. I don't personally have a position on the incorporation of Silverdale. I don't live in Silverdale. I simply gave them the guidance of my experience as a municipal lawyer and understanding certain laws that are quite complicated. Because of that, I cannot rule on any issues involving Silverdale, would not rule on any issues involving Silverdale because I have a conflict in the terms of the fact that I've been involved on the other side of it. So no, I would not rule on any issues on the corporation question for Silverdale.
I have never been involved in any of the issues surrounding the incorporation of Silverdale. I can't speak on pending issues which might come before the court, which that one seems likely to go in front of the court. Often when there's rulings made, people challenge the way a referendum is handled or the way a vote was done. So it's very possible that issue could come before a Superior Court judge. So it would be premature for me to voice an opinion on an issue I might have to rule on. I am aware of having lived in a city where there was an annexation and incorporation, the effects often when there is an incorporation done. In our county, I know a huge part of the budget goes to the areas that everyone is concerned about, the courts, the prosecutor's office, the public defenders, and that money and those services may be lessened.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last question that we have for this morning's examination session is simply, goes to you, Karen. Starts with you. Do you think age should be a factor in the judicial race? Why or why not?
I think the whole person is a factor in the race. I'm 54 years of age, and I think I do bring experience. I think as we get older, we have experiences in different parts of our life, and that causes us to reflect differently. I thought differently about certain issues before I had a child. He's 24 now, and I certainly have different opinions on child rearing. That doesn't mean I would rule differently, but I bring those sensibilities to the court. I have different, having experience in many diverse areas, which has been afforded to me by virtue of being a lawyer for 30 years. So while it's not my age per se, I think that's significant. What is significant is the experience that I have obtained in my 54 years of life, which will help me serve on the bench and bring all of those sensitivities and common sense. Because what a judge has to do is assess the situations in front of her and rule. Thank you.
The voters of Kitsap County have established that age is not relevant. We've elected people for years who have ranged in age from 11 years of experience up to 30 years of experience as judges. What's important in a judge is the demeanor, the skills, the intelligence, and the experience that the candidate brings. The candidate the position I'm seeking in this race is currently Judge Haverly's seat. Judge Haverly was actually younger than me when she took the bench. Judge Conley, the most respected judge in Kitsap County in many ways in public years, was in her 30s when she took the bench. Justice Gonzalez, who was recently elected to the Supreme Court, was in his 30s when he started on the Superior Court. He's only 5 years older than me, and he's on the Supreme Court. Age is not what's important, and our voters recognize that in their decisions they've made in terms of the election. In this race, I think my age is actually to my advantage. In the next 10 or 15 years, we can expect to see the entire bench of Kitsap County retire except for one, and I think we need the next generation of judges.
Thank you. And that concludes our question and answer component for today's Eggs and Issues. Just a quick, brief intermission here to let you know that next week we have 2 individuals running for County Commissioner, District 1. So if you want to know who those 2 individuals running are for District 1, you need to be here, and I'll let you know. So following that's next week, Tuesday. Also let you know that there is a business after hours at Minder's Meats. Is that this Thursday?
Minder's Farm.
Minder's Farms. Okay, so
It's on the
let's
27th.
also put a plug in for Chamber of Commerce for our fellow business members. And with that, now we conclude with our candidates have an opportunity for a 2-minute summary. We began this morning with Jennifer, so we would like to ask for Perry to begin with a 2-minute summary, please.
Thank you for moderating. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you and let you see who I am and hopefully gain your support. As I said, I have 30 years of legal experience. I have significant experience in working in our community, starting a business. I ran a law practice very successfully for many, many years where clients came to me. Running a business, helping with the aging population in the Puget Sound, has given me a different perspective on our community, learning how to raise money, meet people, understand the needs of the community, has been invaluable. Their needs and insights which will serve me well as your next judge. I have legal experience, judicial experience as a pro tem or part-time judge, over 12 plus years appearing in many courts and meeting with and serving many different people in our public. I have practiced in federal and state courts. I have represented, as I said, thousands of individuals. I have the experience, independence, and integrity to be an excellent Superior Court judge who will serve you well. I enjoy the support of many people, as I said, a cross-section of the community, as well as the SEIU, which are the workers who are the caregivers of our community. The aerospace, IAM aerospace workers, local district 751, and many other public support. I am proud to have my campaign co-chaired by Carrie Bozeman and the Honorable Faith Ireland. And I will say that Faith Ireland, who's a former Supreme Court Justice, as well as the over 20 judges who support me, are all judges who know me and have worked with me. And I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you also for your time this morning. I'm going to ask you to look at my website to look at my endorsements. I have more than 400 endorsements, and I'm not going to take up your time going through them now. There is a reason that I am the only candidate endorsed by any of the local judges. There's a reason that I was chosen by the Kitsap County Bar attorneys 64-1 as the preferred candidate. There is a And that reason is because those who know me, those who know my experience and know my qualifications, know that I have the intelligence, the ethics, the work ethic, and the skills and abilities that are naturally important to a judge. Being a good attorney doesn't make you a good judge. Being an experienced attorney doesn't make you a good judge. What makes you a good judge is understanding your role and the significance of being a public servant. I have practiced in this community for 16 years. I have 16 years of criminal experience. I have 9 years of civil experience. I am the only candidate who rarely practices in Superior Court in this race. That is imperative and important, and one of the reasons that I enjoy the support I have. My opponent talks about her life experience. I too have life experience. I am not an infant here who just came out of the womb. My mother, and I had a life where my mother struggled to raise us. I was raised by a single parent. We were homeless for a period of time in my life. I have family members who have mental illness. I understand how complicated people's lives really are. And the fact of the matter is that this life experience that I have has proven to give me the experience to be a good judge, something I have proven every day when I take the bench and I take that role as a judge, even on a parking ticket, extremely seriously. I know that those people who are standing in front of me, from a parking ticket to a felony, and I've heard felony cases, it's the most important thing to them at that time. And I'm out of time. I thank you for your support, and I hope to have your vote.
All right, thank you. Audience members, let's show our appreciation for